Ferrari just made a decision that could either win them the championship or destroy their entire season. And almost nobody saw it coming, because after China, they looked strong, controlled, right behind Mercedes, third and fourth in the race, double podium in the sprint. On paper, everything looked fine, but inside the garage, it wasn't, because Ferrari found something in Shanghai that changed everything. They are losing up to half a second per lap on a single straight, not in corners, not in braking, on pure power. And here's the shocking part. They can't fix it with a normal upgrade. So instead, they're doing something much more extreme. They're rushing a full B-Spec car just 2 races into the season. A complete shift in concept. A high-risk move that could either close the gap instantly or make things even worse. And the reason behind this decision is something most fans completely missed during the Chinese Grand Prix. If you don't understand this one detail, nothing about Ferrari's season will make sense. So stay with me and subscribe, because what's coming next changes everything. China was supposed to be the confirmation. The moment Ferrari proved they were ready to fight, ready to win, ready to take control of the season. And for a brief moment, it actually looked that way. Front row pressure in qualifying. Both cars right behind Mercedes. Close enough to believe, close enough to feel it. But that feeling didn't last, because the race told a completely different story. Hamilton gets a strong start. Leclerc is right there. The car rotates beautifully through the first corners. Balanced, predictable, fast, exactly what you want. And for a few seconds, Ferrari looks like the fastest car on track. But then the straight arrives, and everything changes. The Mercedes just pulls away. Not slightly, not gradually, instantly. Like Ferrari is missing something. And the drivers feel it. They know it. They can push in the corners. They can manage the tires better than almost anyone. They can stay close through the technical sections. But the moment they exit onto a long straight, they're exposed. And here's where it becomes impossible to ignore. This wasn't a one-lap issue. It wasn't dirty air. It wasn't strategy. It was every lap. The same pattern. Again, and again, and again. Ferrari gains, then loses. Builds pressure, then watches it disappear. And over a full race distance, that turns into something much bigger. A gap you cannot close. A fight you cannot win. And internally, Ferrari understood exactly what that meant. Because when a problem repeats this consistently, it's not a weakness. It's a limitation. And limitations are dangerous, because they don't disappear with small changes. They don't improve with setup tweaks. They stay. They define your ceiling. And Ferrari just discovered theirs. But here's the part that changes everything. This limitation isn't visible to most fans. You don't see it on TV. You don't hear it in team radio. But the engineers see it clearly. In the data, in the deployment curves, in the exact moment the power just fades, right before the braking zone, every single lap. And once you see that data, you realize something uncomfortable. Ferrari didn't lose China because Mercedes was perfect. They lost because their car cannot sustain performance when it matters most. And if that's true, then no amount of consistency, no amount of clean execution will ever be enough, unless something drastic changes. And that's exactly why. What Ferrari is about to do next is so extreme. And this is where Ferrari crosses a line they usually avoid, because teams don't bring a B-Spec car this early unless something is fundamentally wrong. Not slow, not inconsistent, wrong. And the moment that realization hits, everything changes inside the factory. Meetings get longer, simulations get more aggressive, and the questions stop being small. They become uncomfortable, because now Ferrari isn't asking, how do we gain a 10th? They're asking, is this concept even capable of winning? That's a completely different conversation, and it leads to decisions that don't happen lightly. Because a B-Spec car isn't an upgrade. It's a reset. A controlled one, but still a reset. New aerodynamic philosophy. Different balance targets. Changes in how the car distributes performance between corners and straights. And most importantly, a direct attempt to fix what China exposed. Energy deployment. That invisible limitation. The one that doesn't show up in highlights, but decides races. Because here's what's really happening. Ferrari can generate performance, but they can't sustain it. They have the speed, but not the continuity. And in Formula One, that difference is everything. Now here's where things get even more interesting, because solving this problem creates another one. If Ferrari changes the way the car deploys energy, they also change how the rear of the car behaves, how it exits corners, how it delivers traction. And suddenly, their biggest strength is at risk. That incredible traction out of slow corners. That stability drivers rely on. That confidence under throttle. All of that could be affected. So now Ferrari is trapped between two realities. Keep the current car and accept they can't beat Mercedes on power, or change the concept and risk losing the balance that made them competitive in the first place. And this is where the drivers come back into story. Because adapting to upgrades is one thing. Adapting to a different car is something else entirely. Hamilton has already reshaped his driving style once. More controlled, more measured, almost surgical. Leclerc operates on instinct, precision at the limit, aggression in rotation. Now imagine both of them in a car that behaves differently. A rear end that feels lighter, a deployment that arrives differently, a balance that shifts mid-corner. One of them will adapt faster, one of them will unlock performance earlier, and that could quietly redefine the internal hierarchy. But we're still not at the most critical part, because all of this, all the risk, all the urgency, it's not just about Ferrari improving, it's about what happens if they don't. Because while Ferrari is preparing a new car, Mercedes is still evolving theirs. And that gap we saw in China, that half second on the straight, that's not fixed yet. It's growing. And if Ferrari waits, if they delay, if they play it safe, that gap becomes permanent. And once it becomes permanent, the championship is no longer a fight. It's a formality, which means this B-Spec car is not just an upgrade. It's a deadline. And everything now depends on one moment, the moment it hits the track, because that's when we find out if Ferrari just made the move that saves their season, or the one that ends it. And yet, even that doesn't capture how big this moment really is. Because what Ferrari is about to introduce isn't just reacting to China. It's reacting to something much deeper. A pattern that didn't start this season. It's been building, quietly, race after race, year after year. Because if you look closely, this isn't the first time Ferrari has had this exact problem. Strong in corners, competitive over a lap. But when it comes to sustained performance, when it comes to finishing the job, something always fades. Sometimes it's tires, sometimes it's strategy, and now it's energy. Different symptoms, same outcome. And inside Ferrari, they know that, which is why this upgrade carries something heavier than performance. It carries pressure, because this is no longer about catching Mercedes. It's about breaking a cycle, and cycles are much harder to fix than weaknesses. Now here's where things get even more complex, because the B-Spec car isn't being developed in isolation. It's being built under time pressure. Compressed timelines, faster simulations, less real-world validation. And in Formula One, that's dangerous, because correlation becomes fragile. What works in the simulator might not work on track. What looks stable in data might feel unpredictable at speed. And if that happens, the drivers lose confidence. And when confidence goes, performance follows. This is why most teams wait. They develop, they test, they validate. Ferrari doesn't have that luxury right now. They're accelerating everything, and that creates a hidden risk that almost nobody is talking about. Because while everyone is focused on the upgrade itself, very few are asking what happens in the first race it appears. Not the second, not after adjustments. The first, because that's where seasons can swing. If the car works immediately, Ferrari closes the gap. Momentum shifts. Pressure moves to Mercedes. But if it doesn't, if the balance is off, if the energy deployment still isn't perfect, if the drivers struggle to trust it, then Ferrari loses more than time. They lose direction, and that's much harder to recover. But here's the detail that makes this even more intense. Because while Ferrari is taking this risk, Mercedes doesn't need to. They already have the fastest car, the most complete package, the most efficient energy system on the grid. They're not chasing, they're controlling, which means every Ferrari decision, every aggressive move, is happening under pressure that Mercedes simply doesn't feel. And that imbalance changes how this story unfolds. Because Ferrari must get it right. Mercedes just needs to stay consistent. And in a championship fight, that difference is everything. Now think about this. If Ferrari succeeds, they don't just catch up. They reset the entire dynamic of the season. Suddenly, those straights in China don't matter anymore. Suddenly, they can attack, not just defend. Suddenly, Mercedes has to respond. But if they fail, if this B-Spec car doesn't deliver exactly what they expect, then everything we saw in China becomes the standard, not the exception. And that leads to one final, unavoidable reality. Ferrari has already committed. There's no turning back. The upgrade is coming. The concept is changing. The risk is locked in. And very soon, we're going to see the result of that decision. Not in simulations, not in theory, on track, at full speed, under pressure. And when that moment arrives, we won't just learn how fast Ferrari is. We'll finally understand something much bigger. Whether this team, after all these years, has actually solved the one problem that keeps holding them back.